Lay on the floor like you're watching TV at home or something. Thank you guys again for coming. But before we get started, I'm going to bring up a friend to talk about for about 2 minutes the role and the importance of the black media. Because I rushed through some of my remarks earlier this morning, but the Republican Party's got to do a better job engaging with black media. Black media is kind of the lens into the black community, especially black newspapers. And unfortunately, you have some black Republicans in this party who will go around saying nobody reads black media, and which I thought about Hazel. So I'm gonna bring up Hazel Trice Edney. She has the Edney News service, a wire service like the AP. So Hazel, come up and talk about 2 minutes about the importance of black media. Hazel Rice Edney. Oh,
Thank you. She's with the Baltimore Times. And also Mr. Salmon right here, who writes for the Trice Edney Newswire and the Baltimore Times. Well, thank you very much, Raynard. This is an excellent, excellent forum, and I thank you for it. I'm going to take up 2 minutes just letting you know the history and the now of the black press. In 1827, for those of you who don't know, two people, John B. Russwurm and Samuel Cornish, founded the first black newspaper, which was called the Freedom's Journal in 1827. And at that time, you know that we were still in slavery. Fast forward all of these years and these centuries, oh no, of course, we're not in slavery, but the same motto that they had then, we wish to plead our own cause, for too long have others spoken for us, we still have now, and we still abide by that. The white media, and yes, we do say white-owned media, oftentimes is so rooted in the old way of thinking that they can't speak for us. The black press has long been covering how police brutality has been pervasive in our community. The black press has long talked about economic development or the lack thereof in our community. The black press has long talked about the joblessness and unemployment in our community. And every once in a while, sporadically, you see these things in, yes, the liberal media, the white-owned press. And I'm standing before you to say that you don't believe the hype when you hear about the irrelevance of the black media now. We are still carrying the ball. Many of the the white media now, they're trying to get into our market. But we're holding dearly to our market because they cannot tell our story the way that we tell our story. I want to just say 4 points about what the black media does. And this did not originate with me. It originated with Dr. Lionel C. Barrow. He gave the 4 reasons for the black press at Howard University on August 13th, 1977. It was actually in an article for the Baltimore Afro-American. First, it's a watchdog. It watches what is being said about African-American people in this country and doing the corrections. It answers attacks that are published in the white press. We still often see those attacks coming from those who don't understand us, who don't perceive what it is that we're talking about when we say Black Lives Matter. It presents a viewpoint different even from that of liberal whites. I don't care what the Washington Post or the New York Times says. They cannot tell our story, as I just said, the same way that we tell our story because they haven't lived us. And the black press also serves as the carrier and preserver of black culture. What that means is there is no black newspaper, as I take my seat, in this country that does not have a social page. And it's not about partying. Oh, it looks like it's about partying, but really that's the na-na-na-na-na page. That's the page that says, you said that we would never be anybody. You said that we would never make it. You said that we would remain enslaved. You called us the N-word. You called us monkeys. But look at us now. We're doctors. We're lawyers. We're presidents. That's what the social worth, and that's why how we maintain our culture in this country. You know, I get excited about it. I wish I could say more, but I'll leave you with this. Pick up black newspapers, advertise in black newspapers, and if you want to see me, I'll tell you more about what I do. I have my cards with me, but go to TriceEdneyWire.com. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Hazel. And again, we have to use all forms of media to communicate with the black community, just like you use all forms of media to communicate with whites, Latinos, women, men, etc. And so I put a lot of value in black media. Well, aside from them running my columns every week, so I have a vested interest in that. But even without that, you go to a black barber shop, you wouldn't know anything about that. I mean, we sit in the black barbershop and the same newspaper would be there 3 or 4 or 5 months. So getting recirculated. So, but that's the side story. But let me introduce you to my panel. Matter of fact, I was told, why don't I let the panelists introduce themselves, and then we're going to have a lively, spirited discussion. And again, no one up here is going to be talking party lines. I want to have a very open, candid conversation about what this panel thinks about the Republican Party, whether it's good or bad. I want the truth, because these cameras you see here, this whole show is going to every presidential campaign, and they want to see what the black community is thinking, as though they needed me to do this. Really? I mean, and so, but as opposed to just standing criticizing, let me provide the solution. So this is how this whole program got started, because I'm tired of these candidates on the Republican side telling me they don't know where these black folks are. They don't know what black folks are thinking. But again, they know what all these Biffy and Buffy are thinking. You know, they know what kind of clothes Biff and Buff wear and where they want to go to school, their Facebook and all that. But somehow when it comes to us, we are so complicated. So Russell Fugit, tell us about 30 seconds about you. He comes from a dynamic family out of Baltimore. He goes back generation and generation in economic and entrepreneurship in Baltimore.
Good afternoon. My name is Russell Fugit. I'm the founder and chief revenue officer of Goodword Digital, and we currently are launching a threat assessment tool here in the state of Maryland, and we're going to be working hopefully with the lieutenant governor in that cybersecurity realm very soon, that listens to social media data and then is able to identify threats. Raynard, thank you for having me today, and thanks for referring to my family history. The one thing I'll mention today about my family history is that I'm descended from a free person of color who fought in the American Revolutionary War, and I am the past president and current chaplain of the Baltimore City John Eager Howard chapter of the American Sons of the American Revolution.
You hear that? You hear that? And he's not an Uncle Tom or a sellout or any of those things that typically people like him get hit with.
Good afternoon. My name is Mamie Willie Bonglo, and thank you for having me. I'm here primarily as a concerned citizen, so this for me is a two-way street, hoping to share my thoughts as well as hear what people have to say about the state of governance in America and what's going on. I have a unique perspective in that I was born here in the U.S., but my parents are both from Sierra Leone, so I had an opportunity to live there for 10 years growing up. So I've since followed, the electoral process, or lack thereof, in Sierra Leone and other African countries. So being back in the States and having become actively engaged in voting and encouraging other young people to be civically engaged, I'm very much interested in just becoming a more aware American citizen. And again, I'm not partisan to any particular party. I'm here as an independent because I really feel I'm always looking out for the best interests of the country and the people and services that are most critically in need of different things. So again, I'm here as an observer, as well as hopefully to share thoughts that you guys may find relevant, and appreciative of the opportunity to speak. Thank you.
My name is Larry McKinney. I'm a Maryland resident, 30-year entrepreneur. Company started in '82 doing facility management, government contractor, then sold the company, and then switched over to radiology. So in healthcare and healthcare management, We have a facility over in Laurel, Maryland. We also run several hospitals as well. I want to talk about the entrepreneurship and also blacks in the fact that we are great entrepreneurs. We're the ones that started most of the things, but we as a people have taken a back seat to things that don't benefit us. The things that we get caught up in, they take us in a bad direction, and we can get back to entrepreneurship and to business where our roots are. We can do great things because we are great people.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you. I like to hear people. My name is Bria Marie. I am a humanitarian, entrepreneur, and recording artist. As Raynard said, I'm a Temple University graduate, 2014. I do a lot of work in anti-bullying. For my bullying initiative, Love Over October, we've partnered with the Philadelphia 76ers. We've recently worked with the Anti-Defamation League, and we're working just to raise bullying awareness and contribute to the solution. I'm here as a representative of, I guess, the young voice, as Raynard mentioned. So, you know, from the panels that I've been on and the young people that I've heard express their opinions, I just hope to contribute to that today in this discussion.
My name is Jack Brewer. I'm currently the CEO of the Brewer Group Companies. I'm also a former NFL player, played 5 years in the NFL. I'm a passionate philanthropist. I run the Jack Brewer Foundation, which serves communities all over the world, focusing on economic development, particularly on the world's poor, the poorest black countries in the world. And, you know, politically, me, I'm dead in the middle. But at my root, I'm a conservative. I like to make money. I like to empower communities. I like job creation. And so, you know, I've always had that at really the root of everything that I've ever done. I started my company when I was 19 years old. So I ran it all through the NFL. I ran my companies in college. And so for me, my way out was through entrepreneurship. And so that's really why I'm here today. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. And Raynard, thank you so much for inviting me today. I'd like to say that I cut my teeth on the Republican Party during the Reagan administration when I was just a little bit older than Bree. At that time, I met great folks like Lynn Williams. And I also like to tell people that I don't quite recognize the Republican Party today. Because I was brought in at a time when outreach was essential in the Reagan administration. I've been lucky and very blessed since that time to hold a number of positions with Republican administrations. In the Commonwealth of Virginia, I was Assistant Secretary of the Commonwealth. I was Director of the Department of Minority Business. Under George W. Bush, I was a Regional 3 Administrator for the U.S. Small Business Administration, which handled this area. And I'd like to brag and say that during that time, we raised lending to African Americans by 75% and to Hispanics by 35%. We're very proud, very, very proud of that record. And I was also the Associate Deputy Administrator for Government Contracting. So, you know, my career has been really immersed in economic development and small business development. I'm originally from Charlottesville, Virginia, where a lot of that economic development just simply never reached African Americans. And I've been lucky to work with people like Ron Langston over there, who you know, has been all over the world working on economic development projects and feeling the pain of small businesses and minority businesses all over the world. And so being able to come here today and just to talk to you a little bit about, you know, how I feel about economic development and how I feel about the Republican Party and what I think needs to be done throughout, I think it's a great opportunity. So thank you for inviting me.
Good afternoon. My name is Michael Graham. I am the one of the owners and the executive vice president of corporate relations, external communications, and events for Heart and Soul magazine, which is a publication that caters to the health, fitness, and wellness of women of color across the country. I am a longtime Republican who cut his teeth in Baltimore, so I'm very sensitive to those things that take place in the city of my birth, and I want to see it change. People like Joy Bramble, who's been my good friend for too many years for us to mention Joy. It becomes important for me to articulate how the Republican Party needs to grow and the things that I see within it that I believe needs to change the direction and the focus so that it encompasses all those that fall under the flag of the Republican Party. I will say this, though I am a Republican and proud to be so, I vote my interest. And I don't vote along party lines because that doesn't necessarily serve me all the time. So I'm here to help bring some light into the darkness for this forum if I can. Thank you.
Thank you guys for your agreeing to participate in this panel. What I'm going to do, we're going to keep this very simple. I'm just going to ask some questions. I have no idea what I'm going to ask. That's why it's called stretching right now. But when I do, no speeches now, no talking points. But what I want the audience to get some flavor as to what the view of the Republican Party is among a distinguished group of panel like Russ, registered Democrat, independent, Republican, Democrat, independent, Republican, Republican. So you have a good cross-section. You got the millennials, these two here, the two women, the two younger women, but you're a fine woman, though. I know. I did my best, man. No question. But I really want the audience to see what representative people from the black community, I mean, everybody on this panel is very involved in the black community. You can't call any of these people names or you made it and you forgot where you came from. All these people are deeply entrenched in their various communities. And so, is there anyone on this panel who would never ever vote Republican just as a principle, period? Under no circumstances. So that means Republicans, there's an opportunity if you talk the language these folks want to hear. Russell, when you think of the Republican Party, what word comes to your mind immediately?
Wow. Maybe that's the word.
Wow.
Well, no, nothing.
Oh, wow.
I feel like I've been challenged by the leadership, particularly in our Congress. And I understand there's been some issues perhaps where it's been necessary to push back against perhaps the president's agenda or a Democratic agenda, and I respect that and understand that, of course, as a Democrat, registered Democrat. But I've been concerned about the lack of progress in our Congress and the lack of leadership in terms of being able to get things done to affect change in a time when we have so many economic needs and just the desire seems to grind things to a halt and run out the clock on the president's administration.
Would you ever vote, or have you ever voted for a Republican?
Absolutely, I have.
So you're open to voting Republican. What is it that you need to hear, say on the presidential level, going into next year's election? What is it that a Republican candidate needs to communicate to you?
Leadership. I know there's a variety of issues that I think are important. And I think because of being a Marylander and what's happened in Baltimore recently, I've been very focused locally. And I've been very impressed with the leadership of our governor and lieutenant governor, and thank you for having.
Who are Republican.
Who are Republican, yes. So nationally, I'm still waiting to see. And that's for both on the Democratic side and the Republican side. No one has gotten my attention or my vote as of yet. And so I'm looking forward to the primary on April 26th, I believe it is, and we'll vote for a Democratic candidate, but I'm so far not personally impressed with what I've seen on either side of the aisle as of yet, although I do see potential.
Okay. Jack, you played 5 years in the NFL. And of course, when the fellas in the locker room or you're going out after a game and you all are talking money and business, what is it that take us inside the conversation you and the fellas would have when you all go hanging out when it comes to voting and voting your interest, or did that ever come up?
Of course. I mean, first off, you have to look at the demographic. You're talking about professional athletes are some of our wealthiest young African American men and women. And so most of these men and women come from the same community as we all come from, no different. You know, most of them come from impoverished backgrounds, very, very little education. For me, for example, I had no one in my family ever go to college. Dad couldn't read or write. I had to watch and teach him how to do that growing up. And so we understand and we feel for people, obviously, in those areas. But then again, you know, we don't want to pay exuberant amounts of taxes, right? We pay attention to capital gains and different things like that. And so you're really caught in a awkward situation. And I think that is the barrier for Republicans with African Americans today. You can't represent something that really goes at your heart, right? So if I'm going back to my grandma and I see she's struggling and I'm fixing up her house and I know that she needs to get, you know, her Medicaid and she needs to get her government assistance in order for her to survive. And I got a whole family, a slew of people that are in that same category. I got so many family members on welfare. I got so many cousins in prison because they were selling dope. So those issues are issues that are important to me. And so for me, I'm as conservative as they come, believe me. But it's very difficult for me to agree with most of those red states because most of them I don't feel like represent me.
And when you say you're conservative, but they don't represent you, expound on that.
I'm conservative fiscally, right? But socially, I want my people taken care of.
What does that mean? What does that mean?
Not that I agree with all the welfare systems. I don't agree with that. Entitlement programs, I believe, need to be refined, right? I don't think you should be able to smoke crack and stay on welfare, right? So common sense things for most people that are sensible, you know, you can vote that way. But for me, it hadn't gotten there yet, right? So I'm not going to support somebody that is feeding money to the NRA and putting AK-47s in the hands of our kids. I'm not going to vote for that, no matter how much money it saves me or how much money I make. So there's certain principles and there's certain things that we have to look at, and really, do you want to identify with that or not? And for me, listen, there's a couple Republican candidates that I love, right? Actually, I like them more than what's on the other side. But until they get off of those couple things that I just can't, my heart won't allow me to do, I won't be able to vote for them.
But you're open for a conversation.
100%. Would love to have one. Okay. And I appreciate you for giving us this stage to be able to have this dialogue.
And we're going to have more conversation with some of these presidential candidates. I'm going to have some major announcements coming up in 2 weeks with some presidential candidates. Bria Marie, you're probably the youngest person on the panel. You seem to always occupy that spot when I do an event, but you represent.
Gladly.
But you keep it 100, right? I keep it 100. That's an inside joke there. One day we'll explain that to you. Tell me, Bria, obviously you've only been voting a few years since.
I've only been able to vote in the presidential election once.
Once,
I wasn't old enough the 2008 one.
Okay. Are you listening to both Democrat and Republican candidates right now?
Yeah.
What is it that you need to hear to get you to look seriously at voting for a Republican candidate, whoever that candidate may be? What is it that you need to hear?
Well, there's two things, and I want to speak on behalf of me and a couple of my friends that I've talked to about this.
Both of them?
Yeah. Mom and dad. I'm playing. No, people around my age that I've talked to about this. Two things. Education, specifically student loans, and also some sort of voice on the racial divide and police brutality, and not the Black Lives Matter, the actual group, but the phenomenon, the issue of Black Lives Matter. Because if you with student loans, for example, That's really, really important. And I've talked to people and asked, why did you vote for Obama last election? And they said, well, because Mitt Romney wanted to cut out all of student loans. And there's so many people that went to school with me that they had to leave because they couldn't get student loans. We may have middle class parents, but that doesn't mean that they have the amount of money to give it to us. It doesn't mean that it's available to give it to us. So we need some better access to those student loans. There's some people I know that couldn't go to college because they didn't have any student loans. So it's very important on that aspect of it. And then with the racial divide and the Black Lives Matter part, it's going to be hard to get a black vote if you're not talking to the black community. If you're not even talking about it, you don't have to agree with the Black Lives Matter. You don't have to say anything that'll put you on Front Street. You don't have to make a wrong comment, but at least acknowledge it.
Sure.
You know, if you look at the candidates across the board, Hillary is going in talking about Black Lives Matter, but there's some other candidates that don't say anything when it should be said.
Exactly. That's a good point. And tell your friends, very good point, and tell your friends it's not true that Mitt Romney wanted to cut student loans, but because he didn't show up, a lie repeated enough time becomes the truth. And that's kind of what I'm getting at, and that's kind of, if you read my columns every week, that's the point I keep making to Republicans, that you look at all the cable TV shows, Fox, CNN, MSNBC, I guarantee you all couldn't name me probably one black Republican that you respected when you're sitting at home watching it on TV, because most of the time the guys they get on TV are so inflammatory and so hyperbolic. You're like, if that's what a black Republican is, I don't want anything to do with it. You know what? I agree with you. I know most of them. I don't want anything to do with them. And so we got to do what Bria Marie is saying, is deal with these issues of racial disparity. I grew up next to Ferguson. I spent a semester at University of Missouri during the summer when I was in high school. I have a lot of friends that graduated from there. And Republicans have no standing whatsoever to talk about race. And I'll go back to the civil rights days and Martin Luther King and Abraham Lincoln. If you got to go that far back, something wrong with you. I mean, I'm trying to get, and cross my finger, these presidential guys to address the issues you're talking about in a public forum. So when I get some dates, I hope you're available, because I would love for you to be a part of that conversation with some of these presidential guys. Definitely. All right. Africa. Sierra Leone. I do a lot of work in Africa. A lot of you all know that. So I think one of the biggest things the Republicans overlook is the African diaspora here in the U.S. Most Africans, when they come to the U.S., most of them tend to lean Republican anyway, but nobody reaches out to them. Talk about that.
That is true. My parents have always been, politically engaged, and from a very young age, they encouraged me to, learn about, voting and just the power of your voice as an individual. So, as you mentioned, culturally, I think, I don't want to speak for every African country, but those that I'm familiar with, our values tend to lean more on the Republican side and lean towards conservatism more than, liberal. And you're right, they don't, Republican candidates, generally speaking, have not focused on the African diaspora, and we do, in fact, have a very significant voice. There are many of us here in the country, either, offspring of immigrants to the country or those who've become naturalized citizens and can vote and do care about what's going on across the U.S. And our overseas interests. So it is rather important to engage us as well and treat us as equals in the electoral process, and come out and hear what our communities have to say. There's a lot that we're contending with, in addition to, being in the U.S., many of us have, gone into entrepreneurship to try to, better ourselves. So we share the same concerns as Black American, citizens. I do agree that largely our voice has not been encouraged or solicited, but we do have lots to say, and it's worthwhile, intelligent conversation that we're looking to have. So I'd advise, candidates to actually give us a try. Many of us are members of different organizations that are just waiting for invitations for responses to those invitations. They do go out, but the responses are few and far between. So it's rather important. We do have a large population here in the U.S. that care about what's happening across the country, and so include us in these conversations.
Okay, now I'm gonna ask, Allegra. Allegra McCullough worked for President George W. Bush, 2 governors in Virginia, started with Reagan. Again, as I mentioned in my earlier remarks, you Republicans that say you don't know where these black folks are who would look at the Republican Party, right up here. These are the prototypes of blacks all across the country. These are not anomalies here. So this is Biffy, Buffy, Shane. I mean, they're here. So go ahead, Allegra.
One other community that tends to be just totally invisible in terms of any political influence, and that is the Caribbean community. The whole political environment just tends to just have them blend in as black rather than looking at the fact that they represent a very diverse community. And what I was told a number of years ago by a major Republican, well, they're so small. Well, they've been operating as, one whole region within the last few years and doing some amazing things in terms of economic development. And this also is a community that needs to be engaged politically, and it's a great opportunity for Republicans to get into those communities to see what it is that they want, what it is that they need.
Michael, you are what I call a serial entrepreneur, and over in Maryland specifically, you have your hands on the pulse of the black business community there. What is it that, in your estimation, the Republican Party needs to say? Because where you live at is overwhelmingly Democrat. Prince George's County, one of the wealthiest counties in the country, and they're overwhelmingly Democrat. What is it that, in your estimation, your neighbors need to hear out of the Republican Party to get them to even look at the Republican Party for the presidential next year?
Well, first of all, there needs to be some engagement.
Now, okay, when you say engagement, tell folks what that means to you.
Well, engagement to me means that there has to be an outreach from the Republican Party into the communities of more wealthy and established black business people and communities overall. There's a great deal of wealth in my county. In fact, just to expand on that, it's the richest county in the world for black folks. Wow. Prince George's County. If you're the richest county in the country, by extension, you're the richest county in the world. But the Republican Party, from what I have seen, says, well, that's a stronghold for the Democratic Party, and we can spend our resources better elsewhere. And quite frankly, that's poppycock. Huh. Because now you're saying that everybody that is a critical thinker is not going to come and hear what you have to say. Well, if you're saying things that make sense to the constituency that you're reaching out to, it will resonate. If you don't even try, then you're leaving your opposition to only have a foothold in the community. And why would you do that? That's nonsensical to me. So if you insult my intelligence, then why should I support you? But if you have, and the Republican Party does, have a message, articulate the message. And that message is not going to be articulated through general market media. It's not going to happen that way. You have to talk to black folks like you're talking to black folks. You have to use our media. You have to use our businesses, because when there's support for black business that employs people that look like them, then that grows the economy exponentially. So when you don't do that, you get what you got.
Which ain't much.
which is not much.
How many people on the panel have heard of a person by the name of Reince Priebus? What does any word come to your mind or image when you hear that name?
Well, chairman, but
Okay. What about you, Russell? Allegra? Michael?
He wants to.
Can anybody here name a black staffer who works for the RNC? Can anybody name me a black staffer that works for any Republican in the House or the Senate? Are you all listening to this? If we don't know that you even have black staffers and who they are, two, what's their name? Right. Two out of all these.
What's interesting is that I have had staffers of Democratic legislators call me for advice or for opinions or to appear before Congress for testimony. I've never had a Republican staffer call me for that invitation.
Now, mind you, she's had to be confirmed by the Senate, right? No, you have to. Okay, she was a regional administrator for SBA. Ron, sitting up here, knows more about economics than any black or white person when it comes to the small business community, and you would think they would take advantage of these resources here, but again, they don't know where you are, Ron. And he's out of Iowa, of all places. So you would think he'd be hot in demand with the Iowa caucuses coming up, and we're going to work on it, Ron, because we got some things going on in Iowa. Russell, now you're an entrepreneur. Who, in your view, creates a better environment for your business to flourish? Would it, in general, be the Democrat Party or the Republican Party, just in general?
For me, that remains to be seen. I think my company's an emerging company. They have an office in Alexandria, office in Baltimore. And again, I'm excited about the Republican administration in Maryland right now and what they're doing. I know there's tax opportunities. I do think the outgoing Democratic governor created a good environment in terms of the Venture Maryland Fund and some of the financing opportunities in the state for business. So I'm excited about that. I think I really have been disappointed in the federal level, to be honest. Some of the interactions I've had with the SBA it didn't go the way I hoped it would go. And so I am open to seeing what might happen in another administration, either Democrat or Republican, in terms of the SBA and some of the statistics you quoted most recently in your article.
And Raynard,
Yes, right.
let me just say, too, because Russell, this brother, not only does he work in cybersecurity, but if more people knew about what he does on the social media platforms, he has a platform that's phenomenal. But, and every entrepreneur in here, every business person, every corporation could take advantage of him if they only knew that he existed. You know, this is a sharp young man right here. Yeah, and I don't just say that because I know his father. But he's a bright, gifted young man. And as you are going about the process of educating America on the wealth of knowledge that exists within the black entrepreneurial community, you would do yourself a service by having this brother.
Yeah. Well, it's in
involved.
his genes, more specifically, Gene Fugit, the former NFL player. And he got tired. He's related to the Reginald Lewis family, Beatrice, and all. So, I mean, no, the party, see, he's the prototypical registered Democrat who the Republican Party, if they talk the language he needs to hear and back that talk up with action, he would be in the Republican Party if they start cultivating relationships with people like him. Jack.
I love his family. His sister actually worked for me.
Oh, okay. My
And-
condolences.
And you haven't met his bad sister. No, I mean, his brother-in-law is one of the best baseball players in Major League Baseball. His father was an incredible NFL player, and his uncle was the first black billionaire. So I mean, this
Reginald
man,
Lewis.
yeah, real billionaire. So he knows how much I love him. But I wanted the question you asked him. For me, if I had a Republican president, it would be much better on my business. I just wanted to say that.
In what area?
publicly.
In what regards?
I work in finance and I work in advisory work. And the regulations around my business have gotten to a point where I can't hire people like I could before.
Right.
I'm also put in a position where with minimum wage going up, I can't hire people and pay them on a bonus structure anymore as I could before. So yeah, it's affecting my business, and I just wanted to say that just because I know that's why you're asking the question.
See, Jack is he's not bad for a former jock, is he?
I just want to come back to it real quick, and I think about myself in an interesting position. I mean, I was one of those guys. I was skinny. I had hair. I was 19. I was on campus raising hell at one point. I was that individual. Now I'm in the suit. I'm in the tie. My hair is all gone. But nonetheless, looking at the business environment, and I hear and I have other advisors and like Jack on Wall Street who say the same thing, who are African American. And then I think about my company, and I understand that the Affordable Care Act, in fact, put my sister out there, allowed her to get insurance when she was in law school, right? Because she could go on my stepmother's insurance at the time because of her age. So that was great, but then I understand as a business person that the Affordable Care Act may in fact impact my business and prevent me from hiring. And I do in fact have a vision, a Hub for Hope vision in Baltimore, where we really want to do some economic empowerment, where we already have a plan where we're going to be able to hire people with a junior college education who can help us build technology and help us work and do some of the things we're doing in social media. But I get concerned about, am I going to hit a point where it won't be economically feasible for me to continue to hire people right in the center of Baltimore where we're located.
Yeah, because once you get over, I think, 40 or 50 employees, then
Exactly.
Obamacare kicks in and puts all these mandates on you, talking about government regulation, and that kind of stifles your incentive for creating more jobs and more revenue. Mamie, what are the top two issues that you need to have addressed relative to the Republican Party on the presidential level that would get your attention and make you look at seriously voting for a Republican?
Like Bria, I am also very passionate about education, so that's primary. And second is healthcare. I mean, health is wealth, and if you don't take care of yourself, if you don't consider your body a temple, then you're unable to manifest in other areas of your life. So I do care about healthcare and education as my two top priorities.
All right, Larry, you're another one of these phenomenal entrepreneurs. If you could be president for one day, what's the one thing you would do relative to the business environment that you say, hey, as president, I'm doing this one thing that's going to make the business environment better, not only for me, but for all businessmen?
For business concerns, I think the hardest thing coming from the federal level, with Allegra doing a lot of the legwork and stomping for a lot of us, I think the Republican Party misses a great opportunity through language, using divisive language, and not including and being in the community with entrepreneurs that are definitely out there, that people, they talk, they have they want to be in the Republican Party, but nobody's out courting them. Nobody's out. We talk about the barbershop, the guys in the barbershop. I talk to them, I bring them along through all these elections, and a lot of their views, and the Africans are definitely Republican leaning, right? They are there, they're leaning that direction, but they don't have anybody to talk to, right? There's nobody in the community. During the Reagan-Bush administration, Bush 41, the SBA was a strong proponent of black business. We don't have that today, right? Those leaders that are in the federal government and like Allegra that brought us along, the small businesses brought them along, then we created these policies that locked the black businesses out. The ones they say they're trying to help, we are not doing. So contract reform. So we have an opportunity to get in there on the entry level and start to be the entrepreneurs, right? Because if we don't have it from an entry level, then how do we have the entrepreneurs down the road, right? So how do we get on the stage if we can't start and the policies lock us out from the beginning? So I would say reform the contract part of the federal government so that we have the entry level. Everybody laughed at low bid and we have these low bid contracts, but that's where the blacks came out and they got into the entry level jobs, right? So if you don't, and when Jack talks about the minimum wage, it being a crushing thing, right? So it's the first job that's the most important job. And if we can't get in there because the minimum wage is $20 an hour, right? You can't get started, right? You can't start at the waiter from at the Ritz-Carlton. You got to start it down the line at McDonald's, right? You got to get that McDonald's job so you can make 150 grand at the Ritz-Carlton as a waiter or a bartender.
Bria, let me ask you this, and we're going to spend about 5 more minutes, and we're going to wrap this up. When you're with your friend, are social issues high on your list of priorities when you're with your friend? As far as, when I say social issues, whether it's homosexual marriage, whether it's abortion and things, are those very important to you and your friend as far as how you're going to vote for president next year?
Definitely, because they affect us. They affect us. Those are issues that are definitely dealing with the millennial generation, and depending on what that candidate's outlook is, it'll definitely affect their vote. Each friend is different. Each friend has a different outlook on it, but that's the line. Those social issues are definitely the line.
Now, it's common conventional wisdom that people in your demographic are all pro-homosexual marriage and all pro-abortion. Is that your sense, that it's just a blanket, my age group, we're all for this and that?
No, I know that it's increasingly for homosexual marriage, but literally with the friends that are in my head, they have different outlooks. So it's not everyone. You're not, just by saying you're for something, you're not about to get the whole millennial age group. They're different opinions, but they're definite opinions.
Right. One other social question for you, since you're the only entertainer on stage. Do you think when a presidential candidate like Mike Huckabee got in trouble last year with his book when he said something about Beyonce, the way she carried herself on stage, he didn't call her a prostitute, but basically he was saying he didn't think that was a good role model for little kids to see her half naked on stage, and he gave her a lot of compliments about her skill as an entertainer, but he was saying as a role model, the way she projects herself was not the healthiest thing for those looking up to her. Is that a big conversation when you're with your friends as far as these celebrities, whether be a role model or not to be a role model?
With the friends my age, that's not as big of a conversation. The friends that I grew up with, they probably think I'm crazy because that's something that I think about. But I do have older friends that I'm with, business-wise, the people that I work with, that's also a conversation of role model. Are you a role model just from your little sister looking at you? Those are things that I think about, but everyone's not exactly thinking about that at this moment.
Right. Let me ask you a couple of real lightning round questions, and then we'll get out of here. And again, I got copies of Bria Marie's CD for you all on your way out there. And it's awesome. Is my song on here, Learn to Love You?
Yes, it is, number 7.
And you ever tell that story, Bria, I will tell the story. Go ahead.
Well, you gave me permission. Raynard actually threw me a great album release party. Miss Maggie was there. A couple of people in here were there, bought CDs. And after my performance of Learn to Love You, which is a song about that journey of learning to love your insecurities, no matter what anyone says about you, learning to love yourself, I turned around from playing on the piano, and Raynard was crying. He was crying in public. I thought he was kidding. You guys know how he jokes. I thought he was joking, but he was really crying, and he told me that my voice was anointed, and to God be the glory for all of that. But I felt blessed that it could touch somebody that way for real. So that song's on there, number 7.
and you got, I'm serious, you got to hear that song, Learn to Love You, and the video is shot in Philadelphia in Love Square. And I'm telling you, Carvin told me, her producer, that Bria has sang this song at outdoor concerts in Philly with Tukey and Rasta and all those big gangbanger type dudes. She sings that song, they start crying. Now these are big old gangbangers now, but this song, you got to hear this song seriously. If this song doesn't touch you, then let me just put some dirt on you. Let's just call it a day. But let me ask a few quick questions. Would any of you all, if you all had a chance to meet with a Donald Trump, Mike Huckabee, a Rand Paul, Chris Christie, a Jeb Bush, is there anyone who say, I would not meet with them? Yeah, like, hey, you're supposed to be a safety, man. That's supposed to be your security there, man. Hey, now look, a football player needs somebody to protect them. Really? Come on, Jack, represent, man. I'm gonna make this a final question. I'll just go starting with you, Mike. If you could look at collectively all these Republicans running for president, what are the one or two things you want them to hear about what we're doing on this panel and what they need to do to connect with people like you and your friends to get them to consider voting for a Republican next year? What is it that they need to do?
Well, the first thing that they need to do is have some intelligentsia within their cabinet and to articulate the perspectives of people of color, because they don't have anybody. If they did, I don't hear it come through. So if nobody's in your ear saying, man, you can't say that, then they don't necessarily know that it's not taboo to say. You asked earlier if we wouldn't meet with anybody. I wouldn't meet with Donald Trump personally.
Why?
Because though I think he is a laudable businessman, and I understand the sensationalism of a campaign, when you start talking about building 10-foot walls only around Mexico, not Canada, not Eastern Europeans, right? Only black and brown people, that tells me who you are. And you're not the man that can lead the country that I live in, because you're not sensitive to anything that pertains to the demographics of this country, which are changing, oh, by the way, So I wouldn't want to meet with Mr. Trump. Everybody else I could have a conversation with.
Okay. Allegra, what one or two things you need to say to Republican presidential candidates and the Republican leadership about this issue of engaging with the black community, especially black entrepreneurs like you guys?
They need to understand that all black people don't think the same, that there are individual communities that think differently. They need to understand that if you truly support small business, and in particular minority businesses, you will never lose a race. I guarantee you, if you truly support it and truly create a comprehensive program to improve business with small business, you will never lose a race. And I don't know why they haven't figured this out yet.
Hey, give us some love. Give us some love.
My recommendation, by the way, I'll meet with any of them. I'm bringing him to meet with Trump, though.
Yeah, we'll gang up on Mike. We'll gang up
You
on
got to cover me if I ask you. For me, my advice would be to care. I mean, we talk about as much as we want, no matter what the issue is education, black entrepreneurs and business. But if you want a community, you got to really care about them. You can't hide that. If you really, truly care about a community, as a presidential candidate, one of the biggest problem that we have in regards to a demographic in this country right now are our young black men. You shouldn't have to tell a Republican, a Democrat, Independent, Green Party, Tea Party, whomever. If you care about America, you care about fixing this problem with our young black men. And it's gotten so bad. And even our black president, who I voted for twice, who inspired me beyond belief as he was running for president, doesn't focus enough on our black men. This is an epidemic. And so for me, that tells me a lot about where your motives are and where your motivations are and really how you're going to be as a person and who you are in your heart. If you got a population like that in our country that is just thirsty and just in need, but you won't let these kids go to community college for free? You won't teach them a trade for free, but you'll lock them up for selling some weed? It's absolutely mind-blowing to think that we even have to have this conversation in 2015 in the United States of America.
My answer is extremely similar to Jack's. It's hard for someone to be for you if they don't feel like you're for them. So showing that you care, showing that you know what's happening, that you're not just ignoring these issues, I say it again, Black Lives Matter issues, that you're not just acting like they don't exist because they do exist. If you acknowledge them and show that you care about them and that you can be involved in them, then you might get a better look, a better view.
Good. Thank you. Larry.
I think the key for them, and the thing I'd like to see the most, is for them to come up with some concrete policies for black businesses, not us getting a percent of the percent of the percent. Show us how we can be rich, okay? Show black businesses and black businessmen how they can improve their lives. And believe me, when we had 1,100 employees, right? So if you hire that many people and it rubs off and they see who's taking care of them, right? They see who's paying the bills. But if you continually have language, right, that is derogatory, and then you don't show up in the black community, so the only thing they can take is from the Democrats or somebody else that is telling your story. You have to be there in the community to tell your story with some credible people that will not only give lip service, but will put some meat on the bones, some contracts, some ways that they can see how they can start from point A and then become that millionaire, right?
Right, thank you. Mamie?
Much like Bria and Jack, I was going to mention authenticity. I think, more than just going into a community and, you have talking points, they always brief you on, who you're meeting with, and you're prepped on what to say. But if you don't come across genuine and sincere in caring about that demographic, it'll come out. It'll unravel at a future date. So I think they all need to pay careful attention to just being authentic individuals, and really caring about the issues impacting so many Americans, be it poverty, be it, again, healthcare, education, civil rights issues that have already been mentioned. So my one key point I'd say would, for them to all be cognizant of their approach and how sincere they're being, because those records will come out much like, their voting records. You'll see what they've been supporting throughout. And if I could just answer that question about whether I'd meet with anyone, I probably wouldn't want to meet with Donald Trump either. Maybe I can't stand the sight of his toupee and his smug grin. But yeah, he's been very inflammatory, and I just would prefer to not be in that presence.
Russell.
I don't think I have much more to add than what's already been said. I do recognize, and I guess I will point out, and I will say, I think it's important that if there is to be just a subjective analysis, if a Republican candidate plans to win in November of 2016, they better start laying the groundwork now. I think that's clear. Just as a foreign political science major, just an analysis. So I don't see that happening. I don't hear that happening. So I'm hoping that what you've done today will help spur that discussion, because I think there are a lot of people who are open at this time for an argument. I know the fact that Vice President Biden decided not to run. I know there's people who are still waiting to see, like myself, who are registered Democrats, who are saying, okay, well, I know the primary is coming up, but then let's see what comes out of this Republican, whatever you want to call it. People have a lot of names for it, what happens on the debate stage and what's going on in the press and on the mainstream media, et cetera. But there's an opportunity. I do believe you're right. You're very timely with what you're doing. There's an opportunity right now to have a discussion that we're having here today over the next year.
Okay. Give everyone, Michael.
If the Republican Party does not have a plank in their platform for the black agenda like they do for the Hispanic agenda and the white agenda, then that's going to be a problem. And that's why they haven't had any traction in black America as of yet, because we're not even a plank in their platform. So until that happens, they will continue to scratch their heads and say, why can't I get there?
Right there. We're going to take one quick comment from Lynn Williams, a good Republican as well.
Bernard, I just wanted to thank you for allowing me to make a comment. I just wanted to close out by saying, when you talk to the campaigns and the candidates, and Allegra kind of touched on this, I just have the same question I've been asking as a Republican for over 30 years now, and as it relates to economic development and minority business opportunities. The Republican Party has created more legislatively opportunities for minority business. The 8A program under Nixon, the 5% SDB program under the Senator John Warner from Virginia, the Mentor Protege program under Bush 1. So my question or my observation, what are they scared of in telling us what they have done for us? If the community know what they have done to create economic opportunity, not to even mention what they have done for historical black colleges and universities in doubling the research money and the grants money. So what's the problem with the candidates, past, present, and future, saying what they have done for us? They are scared to make the observation in the comments. The record is there, the legislation is there, their names is on it. Why don't they just go and tell us what they have done for us, and we will start listening?
Again, thank you so much, Lynn. And you all have heard from a great panel here. These are representative black folks who have ties to their community. They go to church, they're involved in the church, they're involved in the local Jack and Jill Boys Club and 4-H and Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, and things like that. So when you tell me you can't find black folks like these, where are you living at, man? I mean, and they've all said they're open to a conversation with the Republican Party. So I promise you, presidential candidates, last week in Milwaukee, I'm going to get you a copy of this videotape, and I look forward to continuing this dialogue with them, not just with me having these private conversations with you, but these are representative examples of quality black folks, entrepreneurs, entertainers, educators, who are tied into the black community. And if you get people like this across the country involved with your campaign and involved with this party, guess what? Both parties will have to fight for the black vote. And if we do that, the black community and America becomes better. Thank you so much for coming.